Thank you once again for joining us at Catalyst Conversations. Today's guest is a friend of mine that I've met a couple years ago, Jason Wagonspack from The Ranch, and I'm looking forward to hearing a lot about the movie industry, his life, where he's come from, and how he's come to Little St. Bernard Parish and how you are making a big difference here. So, Jason, welcome to Catalyst Conversations.
Oh, thanks for having me, and thanks for saying my last name properly.
Do people get that wrong?
They either butcher it or they go with Wagonspack, which is the more common last name, which is a different spelling altogether. So,
well, I get usually Woodard. You know, people can't say Woodward. The second W always catches people, so I can empathize with you there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. We've talked about this for a couple months now.
Mm-hmm.
Our good friend Sydney was like, "You guys got to get together and talk about this stuff." So I thought I'll deviate a little bit on my normal questions, but I do want to get a little information on you, where you're from. How'd you get here? I mean, you're not from St. Bernard, right?
No, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Okay.
I went to a prestigious high school called Catholic High.
Okay.
And I went there, and I went to LSU, but I had fallen in love with, I wanted to be an actor for a while. So I'd gotten into the theater department at LSU while studying architecture. Funny enough, those two obviously don't fit together, but I wanted to follow my mother, who was an architect. My father's a civil engineer, and so I figured that's where my brain was going to go, was down a creative path, but not knowing it would take me to where I am here today. But I started in theater, and I wanted to act, and I began dallying with that a bit while I was trying to play some sports. One of the guys that I played basketball with was trying to be a director, and so he was like, "Look, I got these short films I'm making. Why don't you come be my actor?" I was like, "Great." I went and did that, had a blast, and then next thing you know, he's graduating much earlier than me and said, "I'm going to leave, go to New York." And I was like, "Well, you know what? I don't really have much for me here. I don't think I want to do architecture. I'm not sure what I want to do. I'm going to move to New York with you." And so I ended up moving to New York in 2001. I actually found an apartment in August of 2001. And then September 11th happened. Yeah. And my mother called me screaming, telling me I was not moving to New York. But we ended up still moving to New York in December. We felt we wanted to be a part of, what we could at least give back. We wanted to obviously still obtain what we were hoping to get, which was education in the film world, but at the same time, really see how we could help be a part of what was going on. And I stayed there for approximately 2 years studying in a little bitty starving actors college called HB Studios on the West Side. It was actually started by, or funded, I should say, not started, but funded by Robert De Niro and several other actors. But it was great. It was really inspirational. But it was there that I learned I didn't want to be in front of the camera anymore. I didn't want to be the story, which is what I thought where all of the action was, which, really wasn't what was tickling me. What was tickling me was telling the story and really creating the story. And so I came home and went to UNO. And this can be a very long story, by the way, so just stop me at any time.
Well, I probably will. Yeah, go ahead. Well, I'll interject when I can, though.
Sure. I came home and I said, you know what? I'm going to go back home to go to UNO, where I knew they had a great film school, and I assumed I was going to be moving to Los Angeles right after that. I was like, that's probably what's going to a career path. Okay,
so why Los Angeles over New York?
Well, I was already in New York. New York had a good film, epicenter of what was happening there, but you didn't have as much opportunity for a connection as you did in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is the mecca of film. New York is where a lot of things are filmed, and a lot of companies have established themselves, mostly through distribution and through large media outlets that are there, but not where you get sort of the creative production companies that come out of California. And so I figured heading there was going to be a better opportunity for me.
Okay, so you moved to California after. Oh, you didn't?
That's where I assumed I was going to do.
Gotcha.
That's what I was trying to say. I came to UNO, figured I'd get my film degree, and then move to California. But I came to UNO, and then Hurricane Katrina happened.
Okay.
And when Katrina happened, I actually I helped a friend of mine start a security company. He had already had it started, but really get it up and rolling, which was just personal security. And so I went out and helped him market that. And in doing that, I actually got a bid for the Deja Vu movie, which is Denzel Washington here, for this security company. Okay. And so that was a really nice little liaison where I started meeting some people in the industry around here. And then through UNO, I got an internship on a movie called The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Okay.
And I obviously, I really thrived there. And the producer took aim at me and said, look, man, you've got a great work ethic. He was like, I'm going to recommend you for a couple of things. He said, if you continue down this path, what will happen is everybody will recommend you for every show that ever comes here. And that's exactly what happened. And I worked on almost every single movie that I thought was a big deal that came here, from Red with Bruce Willis and Morgan Freeman, to Stolen with Nicolas Cage, to Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
So what was your role in all of this?
All of these, I had started as a PA, which is a production assistant, and then I was working my way into locations, which is, many people don't know what locations is. Basically, if you're a locations manager, which I wasn't at the time on some of these, I worked my way up to that. But if you're a locations manager, you're one of the first people that gets hired on the job on location, if you will. So if a movie's being created and conceived in California, it's probably going to look around and say, well, what are the best places that we can actually shoot this to make it, look as good as it can up on the screen? And so Louisiana is a hotbed for that because of the fact that we have a great opportunity incentive-wise for tax credits, but also because we have a vast diversity of locations. You wouldn't really think about it, but we do. We have Infinite Horizon, which is Lake Pontchartrain, looks like the sea. We did Percy Jackson on there, which made it look like the sea. We have Great Downtown, which can double as New York, San Francisco. It can double as many major cities. We also have a lot of diversity, obviously, with forest and swamp, and then we have made with big sand dunes too. Oblivion was shot there, which made it look like they were on a different planet. Mars, I believe, was where they ended up landing. And so anyway, it became a hotbed, and we have just a great abundance of crew and talent here in Louisiana that they've taken hold of. So anyway, so that's why Louisiana became such a big deal. Sure. But I did all those movies as a PA and worked my way into locations, and then quickly into a locations assistant and then assistant manager. And then I got an opportunity on the Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. I said Lightning Thief earlier because I watched it with my kids, but Sea of Monsters, where I was a location manager, and one of the producers, again, took me under his wing and said, I got this other little movie that's coming here. I think you do a great job for it. It's called Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and I want you to manage the whole show. Wow. And I was like, all right, challenge accepted. And I took that on. That was a massive $250 million juggernaut of a movie. And I shut down a large portion of downtown New Orleans for that for about 6 weeks so that we could film. And that really kind of put a name on the map of who I was and what I could accomplish. And so I started getting hired for all the major movies, from that point forward. So I did, The Host. And actually before that, I'd done Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn. And then I had done Terminator Genesis, which actually brought me to Little Saint Bernard. Terminator Genesis, we had a massive need for infrastructure. There wasn't enough soundstage space in Louisiana, and so it was my job to go find how we could build out soundstage space in old abandoned shopping centers, department stores. And I found the old Lowe's on West Judge Perez that had been shut down for, I think, about 7 years at that point.
Was it that long that it was shut down?
So it was 2012 or 13 that we did Terminator Genesis.
I remember watching it being filmed at the building there.
Yeah, and it had to have been 12 because we started our business in 14, which we'll get to in a second. So it had to have been 12 when we actually found it, because it took us a long time to get things rolling along over there. And so I think 13 is when we filmed everything. And it had been closed. They'd opened 2 years after Hurricane Katrina. And the idea was obviously they were going to supply for 50,000 people who lost their homes. And as I think you might know, the insurance didn't come for quite a while around here, very unfortunately. And so they didn't see a lot of the revenues and cut the cord and kind of left it, as an empty shell, which was a benefit for us because here was this 150,000 square foot building that we could create inside of. And so anyway, I found that. I cracked the corporate code of them allowing me to use the space, which was a whole nother story for a whole nother time. And we did that entire movie there. And I one day went and knocked up on Sydney's door and said, hey, I know you own this this Torres Park Plaza, but I also know you own this abandoned, which used to be, I believe, a Save-A Center back in the day. And you got a big parking lot. I got like 200 extras coming today. Do you mind if I pay you this fee and you come and allow us to park in there? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And then he looked out the window and he goes, but you got like another 400 cars here every day. He's like, how do I keep that here? And I was like, well, I've actually been trying to find a way to build a studio here in town. I've been looking all over the place at an opportunity, and this old Lowe's that I found is a great one, and I'm looking to possibly keep it and see if I can, bring more productions there. And he said, well, bring me a proposal, and I did. And 2 months later, we went into business together, and we've done now over 40 television shows, episodic series, and feature films here in St. Bernard Parish, and I have loved every minute of it. This parish has been very welcoming, and I'm really proud to see what we've done and what we were going to do. So
fantastic.
Yeah. So there was the short story of how I got here.
Never L.A., but went straight from UNO to little tiny St. Bernard. That's fantastic. And I remember waiting out one night. I don't know if we stayed, but they were supposed to be doing the big shoot with the helicopter, crashing. And so we parked across the street. And we were like, my kids were young. This was 10 years ago. So they were like 9 and 10. We were going to try to see that, but I think the shoot took way too long. It might
have lasted into the night. Yeah.
So we went home. But that was exciting to see the beginning of the movie industry move to St. Bernard and start to do some things here. Yeah, I've worked with, what was your first job? Location
manager.
Right, manager. And so I've talked with location people many times using here, the Camp Hope, even my house, my house when I had a house down in Braithwaite before it was flooded.
Yeah.
There was a movie that was shot there. And they had a big shooting scene and blood all everywhere. And even when we moved back in, they could never get it completely off. So.
Oh no!
It was funny, but it was a good story to tell. And unfortunately, the movie wasn't really a big budget movie, and it only came out on
a couple of theaters.
Not even that,
theaters. Maybe straight to DVD, which we don't even have anymore.
Yeah, it went straight to that, and nobody really saw it. So it was kind of funny, but. All right, but let's back up a little bit. Sure. So we jumped right into your college years and then your career. But what happens or where did this come from? Like, where does the beginning start for you? Where were you born? Tell me about your parents. Tell me about your family. Do you have siblings? All that stuff. So you went to high school in Baton Rouge, Catholic High, and I know that because my son competed in swimming, so that was always a big school. But were you born and raised in Baton Rouge?
Born and raised in Baton Rouge from a Roman Catholic, or I should say German Catholic father and family, and a Jewish mother. Mm-hmm. So I have two sides of the religious tree here. Yeah. So I have Jewish blood, and I have Catholic raising roots. Yeah. And I went to grade school there and high school there. We lived in the same neighborhood up until I moved away. So I have great roots. I have, like I said earlier, I mentioned my mother's an architect, my father's an engineer. My father is one of 7, and we've got a lot of first cousins, and we do a lot of big family things, big family events. We're a very close-knit family. We share a lot of things like camps and trailers and boats. Of course, and that's
Louisiana
what we do.
Thing down here. Yeah.
And then on the other side, with my mother's side of the family, I have an uncle who is a huge financial analyst guy, has started several companies, is still doing very well for himself out in Utah. I have a grandfather who was a huge lobbyist in the state of Louisiana, which I knew nothing about until I actually got into politics because of being an executive here in the studio world. That's where I come from. I have a brother, a younger brother, who I obviously adore and try to, lead him down the right path. He's doing really well for himself. He's in the construction industry. And
how much younger?
He's 4 years younger than me. Okay. Yeah, but we always competed really hard. We were both big athletes, growing up playing basketball and baseball and football and soccer and all that fun stuff. And so I have that, and then I have a beautiful wife of. Now 16 years.
Wait. Let's
you want to
back
stop
up.
there?
Hang on. Let's back up a little bit. So, Mom and Dad, you grew up in a. Obviously, your parents are still married to this day?
Yep, still married.
Okay, so nuclear family. Mm-hmm. You grew up with a Catholic father and a Jewish mother. Mm-hmm. So did you celebrate both holidays? Like, did you celebrate Hanukkah and then Christmas?
We did not. We were recognizing Hanukkah. It's funny. I actually don't know a lot about the Jewish faith. Mm-hmm. I was never studied it. I never was pushed towards that. They decided early on to raise us Catholic. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because I fought against Catholicism really, really hard as I was raised, because I had a problem with, being disciplined when I was young. Let's put it that way. I was an ADHD kid. I was all over the place. And, I was very independent. And as you can tell, I'm an entrepreneur. I wanted to go down my own path. I had my own ideas.
Yep.
And if somebody was going to tell me otherwise, I was going to give you my opinion, whether you liked it or not. And that didn't vibe very well with a lot of people who were trying to push this, let's just say Catholicism on me and the Bible on me at that time.
Okay.
But anyway, I had great parents who really led me in the right direction, even though they wanted me to become either an engineer or an architect. When I kept telling them, like, no, I'm going to be an actor. No, I'm going to be creative.
So like that, because that sounds, for a lot of parents, probably like crazy. Like, you're going to be a what?
Yeah, and still to this day, a lot of parents would say that too.
Uh-huh.
They had a tough time with it. I didn't. I just had all the confidence in the world. That's where I was going to be, headed. I had this beautiful flow of Jewish Afro hair, this curly hair that I felt I had all the girls swooned over, and I was like, man, this is it. This is my tickets, my hair. And then I moved to New York, and I got a little bit into the modeling world, and I started to lose my hair, and I was like, uh-oh. And that's when I think acting, I started watching myself on camera, and I was like, I don't like the way I look on camera. I don't like the way I'm delivering things, but I still love story. And that's when I switched. I was like, I need to get into the business realm of things. And so that's kind of the way about that.
You do know you're Jewish because of your mother's side, right?
I certainly do.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
but you don't know much about your mother's faith or background or story.
I can't deep dive into Judaism with you. That's not something I can go down. I can only go down on what I believe in, but.
Which is?
I believe that all of us have one thing, and that is love. I mean, you may call it a different thing. People may use different verbiage for it, but I do believe all of us have that energy inside of us that creates a bond between all of us, and that's love. And so I believe wholeheartedly in that, whether it's, whatever religion you want to go down. I don't necessarily place myself in one of those categories, but I place myself in the fact that I love people, and I love having, people around me, and I love having that sort of bond that all of us, I think, have and one another. And so that's my faith at the end of the day.
That is biblical.
But I still don't place
I get you. It's hard sometimes, especially, in a place like Louisiana, like coming from Arizona,
I don't think I knew you were from Arizona, but continue on.
There you go. Yeah, I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. So I moved here after Katrina. I don't know if you knew that.
I knew that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I moved here as a group of people who were here to revitalize and rebuild this place. And we ended up staying because we knew that it was more than bricks and mortar that needed help. People's lives were broken, not just the buildings. And so that's kind of how we came about here and stayed. But coming from Phoenix, there's not a lot of Catholic. The Catholic denomination is not very big in Phoenix. It's all over the place. A lot of different faiths and religions, and so moving here, finding out that like everybody is Catholic, even the Baptists and even the Jews are Catholic, right? Clearly, and so it was a culture shock for me coming to this place and learning more about Catholicism. I'm in here 18 years, and I'm continuing to learn about Louisiana, St. Bernard, and how the Catholic faith has shaped most of this state and this parish especially, and how there's been some great things that the Catholic Church has done, but then there's been some things that, guilt and shame and stuff that has pushed so many people away, unfortunately, from faith. And so you're a very familiar story. People have, like, I believe in something, but I'm not willing to put my roots in one area or another because for whatever reason, everybody has a different story, as you said, right? You're about the story. Everybody has a different story, and it's just it makes me curious to find out, like, why? Where does that come from? Because clearly there's something that has touched you. That there is something, but your desire to pursue it.
Well, I think that early on, the discipline and the regiment that comes with the, being raised in a Catholic family, and not even from my parents, because my parents were disciplined, but my father wasn't going to tell me I had to go to church every Sunday. When I told him I don't want to be at church, I don't feel like I get anything out of it other than me trying to take a nap, while I'm there. They kind of allowed me to not have to continue down that path, and I know there's a lot of Christian groups that do, Bible study in Catholic school, and that was just not going to be where I was going to head. Because again, it became this negative connotation to me when people were forcing something at me. I was like, you can't force anything on me. I'm going to believe what I want to believe, or I'm going to do what I want to do. Quit trying to shove it down my throat instead of trying to open up, which I think is what you're talking about, and just allow it in naturally, or at least explain things to you in a way that, you can obtain them versus having to say, this is what you have to do, or this is what you have to learn.
Where did the forcing come from? Is that more of like from school?
Yeah, it was schooling. It was never my parents. My parents.
It didn't sound like it. Yeah.
No, they were never that forceful. My father was an usher, and still is an usher to this day at all the churches, every Sunday at his church, and he was raised that way. He was, and that was instilled in him, and that became something that I think he felt that kept his unity in his family at the time with his brothers and sisters and his mother and his father. We didn't have that. Obviously, my mom didn't go to church other than on Easter and Christmas when she felt it was necessary. So I questioned that with my grandfather time from time. When I would get some questions answered about what's the difference between Catholicism and Judaism, but none of it really stuck.
Grandfather?
And it was just my grandfather from my mother's side.
Okay, gotcha.
Because he went to synagogue, so
gotcha.
he was Jewish. So he went to synagogue, and he was a big part of the community, the Jewish community in Baton Rouge. But again, I was so much an individual that I wanted to be on my own. And it wasn't that, I'm going to go create something on my own, but I wanted to believe in everybody.
Right.
And I also went to a high school. It's this funny correlation. Like I looked at it in the same way. Like I went to a high school that about 90% of those kids all went to a specific fraternity. And I was the guy who was like, why am I going to get in a fraternity where I got to be pigeonholed in with this group when I can go hang out with all of you all.
All right.
And so that's my personality.
Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of saw myself, and the reason I think that I ran into so many issues with Catholicism and I think religion in general, because, at the end of the day, I looked at it as it's a collection of conformity. It's what do you conform to and what is it that you want to be a part of as a group, where I don't want to be part of a collection. I want to be part of all. And so that's the way I kind of looked at it and saw it, and still do to this day. I don't want to have a conversation with you, or I don't want to have a conversation with Joe Smith or Jenny Wilson and feel that I have to have something that's going to be different from you when I know that we have so much in common. And if you look at today, I feel like we all have these issues that we can't have conversations with each other, or we can't be in the same room with one another because we're either red or blue, or we're, if we're either some sort of political issue or there's some sort of religious issue. And I have never been that way. And so and it's tough.
From a altruistic perspective, I mean, that is the goal, right? To be able to have a space where we can find where we agree.
Yeah.
The hard part is we live in a society that doesn't know how to disagree anymore. I think that's the problem, and I appreciate the fact that of what you're saying. I push back a little bit because there's, I'm about the story as well. I love stories. I love telling stories. I love being a part of the story. And I recognize that not everybody agrees with my story or likes the stories that I like. And we're going to have those differences. And I don't have a problem with that. I like the fact that we don't all think the same or like the same stuff, appreciate the same stuff. Where I am is I wish that we could get back to a place where we can agree to just disagree. And that be okay.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't it?
It would.
There used to be a time where we believed in those things, right? Not too far ago, not too long ago. It wasn't that hard. But we have become a polarized country, world in some aspects, and we have become very binary. It's zeros and ones, right or wrong, black or white. And one of the things that I've loved and appreciated about of pursuing the historical Jewish perspective is the grayness that Judaism offers, and seeing that throughout the apostolic New Testament writings as well. As we've from the Western world, we've turned everything black and white. It's right or it's wrong. if you do this, you're going to hell, I mean, or, it's forced upon you. You have to believe these things. But if you actually get into the perspective and the culture and the history and the actual language that is used, and not in the English language, but the actual Hebrew or the Greek, you find that there's a lot more nuance and a lot more gray that is actually in the text, which I appreciate greatly because life is gray.
Absolutely.
Life is not black and white. Life is not everything exactly the same. We've turned it into this geometrical universe where everything has to add up and be perfectly symmetrical. And that's just not how life operates. And so that'd be like your parents raising you and your brother to be exactly the same. It's just not going to work, right? I have 2 sons that are 15 months apart. If I raise them and discipline them the same way and have the same amount of patience, I mean, they probably would have moved out and hated me, right? Because they are not the same. And so, we would have issues like, well, why didn't you punish him like this? Or why didn't you talk to him like this? And well, I did talk to him, but I didn't talk to him in front of you because you're looking for me to punish him like I punish you, and you're different. And I always had to treat them differently and allow them to grow and find out who they were individually, as opposed to me telling them, you're going to be a baseball player because I was a baseball player, right? Find your path, find who you are, and encourage you to move in that direction. And I feel like we've lost a lot of that as well in culture. Sometimes it's forced upon you, you're going to do this, or sometimes there's no guidance at all. Those are the 2 options that I find the most now. There's nobody like willing to be patient to really like help people find themselves, as opposed to it's find your own way. I had to find my way, so you find your way. Or I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do. Yeah.
I do think there are changes in society that is obviously beneficial in that aspect, which is you're not on your own anymore. I think there's a lot more, mental illness in this world that people are recognizing as mental illness versus, Betty Sue just has an issue. She'll be over it in the next month. Right. Or you'll get past that kid, the death of your let's start with a pet. But then as you move up, your sibling or your father or mother, you'll get past that eventually. It's just a broken heart. But no, there's a lot of that. I think that's changing in the world, and I really feel like people are resonating with feelings and emotions a lot more. I mean, I feel like you and I may have had this conversation, but I mean, even manifesting what it is that you want for yourself and for your family really, sets apart who you are as a person and allows for you to take those steps forwards to become who it is that you want to be and what you want to be. And I think a lot of those things are a little bit more acceptance in our society. I think we're beginning to understand what that means. And I think that thought has a lot to do with, how we find acceptance and what it is that we are going to accomplish in this world. And then we talked about, religion and love. I meditate, you may call that prayer.
I do both. And so therefore, I meditate as well.
And I feel like if it was shown to me early on, because I was such an ADHD kid, my brain was humming 1,000 times a minute or a second at that point. If I was taught meditation early on, I feel like I might have actually been a little bit more accepting into other things, because it showed me just to calm down a bit, and just say, hey, just think of nothing, think of nothing.
I've meditated for years now. I don't believe that that's possible.
The way I do it is, I love the mountains. All right, I love the beach too, but the mountains to me are just so peaceful, and I love getting there in the summer. But I do take a moment when I try to think of nothing, and the mountains are the thing that comes in my mind. And so you're right, I'm thinking of something. So it's a focused meditation. But it helps me focus on nothing else other than the way I feel when I'm in the mountains. And that is, one with nature, the wind in my face, the crisp air going through my lungs, and just the feeling of peacefulness. And that's what helps me get to my nothing. Like, nothing, no work, no emails, no people, just think of nothing for 10 or 15 minutes. And I really think that is massively beneficial to most of us. And a lot of us don't know how to get to that point.
Yeah, so. I've tried a lot of different meditations. That is one of the focused meditations that I've used in the past, whether it be a location or focusing on a word or focusing on, these different aspects that I'm going to go through my day, or,
your breath.
Oh, that's the beginning point,
good.
right? The beginning point always has to start with the breath and relaxation and all these things. And so now I've Eastern mysticism, is where I've kind of spurred off onto and find a lot of that within the Messianic and the Hebrew roots of all of this stuff. There's a lot of things that in the West we just don't understand. And I grew up in a place in a church where, meditation was evil. Like, that's the devil. Like,
Interesting.
You got to stay away from that because you're going to be filling your mind with evil thoughts and all this other stuff. And so for a long time I was like, oh man, that's bad. Anything Eastern is bad. But then when you come to find out that the whole Bible is from an Eastern perspective, then it starts to open up doors of like, okay, what does this mean then? What does that mean then? And you start to learn asking questions. And the whole Eastern perspective is all about questions as opposed to where we come from a Western perspective, which is all about answers.
Yeah, but how are you ever going to grow if you're not curious?
Well, that's
when
the
your
problem.
curiosity stops, your growth stops.
Well, look at our country.
Yeah, well, you're
just
right.
answered your own question, right? That is what we've become. We've stopped learning because we've taught kids to stop asking questions. We tell them what to believe. You find this in the education system. You find it in the church. You find it in the homes. You just do what I say, not what I do. These type of things. And we don't, like I said before, we don't allow our children to explore and find out who they are. And to do that, you have to ask them questions, and you have to allow them to ask questions.
Yeah. My wife has this great, I don't think she read it somewhere and we've instilled it now. But my daughters, I have two. I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. And my 8-year-old's me. She's ADHD. She's all over the place.
Sure.
Love her to death, obviously, because of that. And I see so much of myself in her. My 11-year-old is a lot like her. She's very regimented. My wife comes from a captain in the Navy. That's how we met. He was the captain of the Navy Yard here for many, many years here in New Orleans. And they're from Chicago originally, but she was born here. And so my daughter Sloan gets that from that side of the family. She's like I'm going to do my homework this way. I'm going to make sure my tests are taken this way. Right. This is how I do things. My daughter Sadie is just like I said. She's just popped all over the place. She may have her compartments of stuff that she wants to put stuff in, but it's just random creativeness, which I love. But as we were alluding to, the questions and answers. So my wife has given her a journal and said, hey, you may not be confident enough to come and ask me these questions, and you may be thinking of them when you're in your room alone and you might want answers to these. Write them down in a journal, and I will answer them to you when I have the time, and therefore there's no questions asked. I will just make sure and give you my most understanding and thoughtful answers so that I can help you understand what's going on. And it's a really great tool that I wish, again, I had somebody like that who was a mentor of mine, even though I had parents. But to me, that's sort of a mentorship of a parent. Like, hey, let me allow you, to ask any question you want. Don't worry about the answer at the end of the day. I'm going to give you what I feel is the answer, and I'm not going to hold it against you for asking this question. And it has really opened up her eyes, and it's, really interesting stuff. It's really great stuff, and it's just, small trivial stuff, but things that I think really weigh on a child as they're going through this process. Things like, like we're hard on our kids sometimes, right?
Sure.
But she'll ask,
but you have to be.
And you have to be.
Right.
But she'll ask simple questions like, why does Daddy hard on me on this, but not on this?
Right.
And it's really just something simple, but it's like, I never really thought about that. And you're thinking about it in a different way than I am.
Yeah.
So why don't we help you understand that as we move along? And I really think it's a great tool, and I wish more parents would do that. And I obviously am telling this, so I hope more of your listeners would do it, because I think it'll help bring parents and kids together a little closer as well, which is great.
That's a great tool, and every child is different. So finding out what your child needs to help them explore themselves and their relationship with you, I think is key. And I think what the biggest key before
But it allows for that curiosity. Like, I'm curious about this. Even if it's not about you and me, Mommy, I'm curious about the world, and I want to ask this question, but I'm afraid to ask it to you in general, in person. So,
and what you're doing is demonstrating something that I think we're lacking in society now is we, how do I put this gently? We don't do a very good job as a society of being parents. And I think that one of my biggest things that I've beat the drum on a regular basis is parenting today lacks a core biblical principle. And, you find it outside the Bible as well. But, that one of the very first lessons you learn in Genesis is the idea of personal responsibility. We love to blame people when things go wrong. We love to push stuff off because we don't want to do it, And I think one of the biggest problems that we have in society is a lack of personal responsibility as parents. Like as me and my wife, she birthed, but with me, we have these 3 children who are our responsibility to raise up, to steward, to train them, to help guide them to become successful young adults. That is a big responsibility that we chose because we participated in the act, right? We chose that responsibility. And we've lacked that idea in society today. No longer do we have this overwhelming realization, those are my children. It's my job to raise them to become X, Y, and Z.
Well, because I go back to what I love, which is entrepreneurship. You have so many people who want to be individuals. And you have so many people, I feel like, have their own individual narrative that they feel is more important than others, And so, great, I had this kid, I got something I got to do, I'll just feed it and I'll give it some money and it'll go about its way so that I can still stick down my narrative. You're right, and that's unfortunate. And the act that you're talking about, a lot of, young teenagers are going down that road of, well, this is what I feel like I need, which is the act of, making the babies, if you will, without the responsibility of what comes after that. So I agree with you. Look, when I was coming up as a high school kid, they had the show, what was it? Teenage Parents or Teenage Moms or whatever it was. And I felt like at the time that was a show that was coming out, so it would scare the heck out of you on if you had a kid, this is why you don't want to have sex. I think it was on MTV. Yeah. And they did a good job of showing what not to do half the time as an adult, or as a teenager trying to be an adult and having kids. Yeah. So it scared the heck out of you, but it didn't work for me. Right. And so, I don't want to go down that road, but I have a history with that myself, and it made me grow up very quickly. Yeah. And I think it made me learn a lot about how to be an adult very early on, which allowed for me to say, all right, well, this is the path I want to take. I just need to figure out what the heck I want to do. Right. But it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do, and when I did, wow, I just stuck the course and kept going, and I'm headstrong, obviously, about my industry and about what it is that I hope to accomplish in life. But I wasn't a good student. I have to admit to you, I was not a good student in high school. Again, because I didn't care about most of the things that were being taught in school. And then when I got to college, again, I figured I was just going to follow in the footsteps of my parents and. But just go ahead and check out this little acting thing on the side. But that was where I was passionate. And so I talk to people all the time who are asking, how to get in the industry, or, parents who are like, well, my kid plays so many video games, but he wants to do X, Y, and Z. And, I really think he should be, follow down my path, or he has this. And I'm like, I really go back and I say, what do they want to do? And can you nurture them in what they want to do? If they love video games, do you know how many people make over $100,000, $200,000 playing video games right now? If you're worried about them making money, there's money to be had there. Right. But also, if you allow for them to open up into, hey, how do I develop a game, or how do I make a game? Do you realize that that's going to take them down several different paths that could potentially make them a computer engineer at the end of the day? Wouldn't you love that? That's what that's all about. And so I really try to tell people, especially if they're trying to get into my industry, what is it you want to do? You want to go be an actor? Go be an actor. You want to be a director? Go direct. You got a camera phone sitting right here. Go play around. Tell a story. Yep. Tell people a story. Show people what you've made, and just work your way up from there. But go and try. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to fail, and you're going to fail over and over and over and over again till you realize, oh, this is what I want to do. And you start to find those successes. And the failures still come with those successes. But it's just how you continue to utilize those failures to build yourself up. Because, I've got tens of thousands of failures. I'm sure many people on your podcast have them as well. But they look at them at the end of the day as this is the detriment of who I am, and it's not. Right. And so... anyway, that's a little tangent I went on. I apologize, but
got you fired up. Good.
It got me fired up pretty good. So,
you touched on something I wanted to go to next, was the idea of there was a TV show. You said that Teen Moms, I think, from MTV.
Teen Moms. I think it's.
I think that was what it was, and the idea of how your industry, where you're at, has a great influence over people. Mm-hmm. And the stories that you tell can generate positive motivation, or it can create negative emotions, or it can create anger or fear. There's a lot of things within your industry that can be good, can be bad, can be neutral. But one of the things that I was curious, and we've talked about this recently, is how is AI now shaping your industry, and who is in your industry controlling what AI does and does not do?
The controlling of AI comes from the makers of the AI. So I can't tell you what it is that their intention is, and we all obviously hope that it's for good, but every new technology that comes out is going to have, it's good, it's bad, we're going to have to figure it out along the way. I do feel that AI is going to be more beneficial than it is going to be harmful at the end of the day. I think that I hope that human beings will use it for as much good as we possibly can.
Coming from the guy who was a part of the Terminator movie. Right,
exactly. As I say that, and I think about all the robots that are going to take over this world. No, I'm only kidding. I don't think that will be a detriment to us. But there are some windfalls and some safety parameters we do obviously need to set on AI. We don't know the power of it yet. We all can think that we know through movies and from things that we've read, but we really don't. I don't think we have any clue in the next 5 to 10 years how powerful AI is going to be.
Isn't that exciting yet scary all at the same time?
It is, but wasn't the calculator exciting and scary at the same time?
Yes, but that's a little bit different.
But you think about that, though. When people went from writing on a piece of paper on how to do mathematics to using it on calculator was also, something that people condemned. I would never use. That's cheating. You can't do. And obviously, we all have to use a calculator now to build, spreadsheets and what it is that we hope to accomplish through formulas in business and in theory. But I think AI is going to only advance us further. People think it's going to dumb us down and really make us into people who don't have to utilize our minds as much. I think it's only going to help that, because it's going to allow for you to expand your mind in ways and come up with answers much quicker than you would have ever imagined. Mm-hmm. And so through my industry, though, the current things that are happening, we've obviously just gotten through a WGA strike, which is the Writers Guild of America, and a SAG strike, which is the Screen Actors Guild, which is where the actors are, obviously. And what's happening with AI in my industry is that, you can go to ChatGPT right now and you can tell it the parameters by which you want a script to be written, and it can write a script to, unbelievable accomplishing. It can write a script that could potentially be Oscar award winning. Let's put it that way. It is that good, and it can write it in less than 2 minutes.
Wow!
And so, to me, that's absolutely amazing. But what it is that you are the one who's inputting the information on how you see the story to be told. It's just spitting out the information that it's pulling off of all of the inquiries online. So at the end of the day, AI is basically it's just copywriting off of some other material. It's really what it's doing. You are the creator of how that AI works, right? Eventually, obviously, it's going to have so much stuff copywritten, it's going to look at it and say, well, I'm going to take the very best movies of the last 100 years, and I'm now going to look at how each of them were drafted, and it's got to be obviously in different genres. Here's the 100 best dramas of the last 100 years, and I'm going to calculate what is going to be the next best drama just by the use of mathematics and figuring out what did what in what scale and how it was told. What was the love interest? How many characters were in it? Where was the setting? All of these things play into how a movie and how well a movie is pertained by its audience. It's all numbers at the end of the day.
Sure.
And if we want to get into it, we're all a simulation. That's where I'm getting to. I'm just kidding. But
so what does that do for the writer then?
So for the writer, again, it now helps the writer get to a script faster, okay? Because I don't think that you are going to start utilizing a script that's based off of what the computer is going to put out. It's going to be based off of human input that the computer is going to help you get to. So in other words, Matthew has this idea for this action movie, but it has this love interest and there's this twist. And then you spit all of the other parameters that you want into the machine, and it puts out this 100-page, script that you're going to still have to fine-tune. It's not going to be perfect, but it will help you get to that point quicker. Your idea quicker. You're right. It's going to take away all that legwork that we all, that writers are getting paid a lot of money for.
But
and it will also slim down the amount of writers that will be part of the guild. I do understand that is what is going to happen.
But doesn't that also take away from human creativity?
I think human creativity will always be there, and you will always have humans that will continue to create in our industry. I mean, think about it. The majority of what it is that we tout, because this is true, is it takes humans to make a movie. You can't get a computer to lug 100 pounds of cable across a desert
and
to plug it in to put a light up.
Yeah, and I don't mean that. I mean the creativity within the story.
I agree. It is going to change.
As human beings, we're emotional beings.
We are.
And now we're inputting zeros and ones to give us a story about love. Does that take away from the power of that story?
I don't know, because I think that look, you said the zeros and ones, and I do agree that you can find how you're going to draw an emotion out of somebody by seeing what has happened in the past. Mm-hmm. So I go back to this 100 movies over 100 years. What was the most emotional moment in this movie and that movie? And it can pull out those moments from those 100 movies and insert it into your script. So essentially, you are using a digital form of technology to create an emotion.
So what you're telling me is in 2024, we're going to have better movies than we've ever had before.
I don't know about 2024. I think maybe in 2030. So we got some time for all this to catch up.
Okay.
But I do think it's going to improve, you're right, the story in which we're going to want to be a part of and want to see and emotionally be involved in. So I definitely think that's true. The other thing that AI is doing is you all have, I'm sure you've seen some of the photos and the videos that have come out that have just been generated out of AI.
Yeah, crazy.
And that's where I think it's really going to affect us quicker, is the mere fact that we can now start utilizing digital technology in the way we tell stories, because now I can build a pitch deck, I can tell a short story of how I want to make a long-form film very quickly now using AI. I can go in and tell it what the imagery I want, how I want it to look, what demographic they are, what location they're in. I can set all that up and it can spit it out. Now, that doesn't come in a couple of minutes. It usually takes several hours. But think about how that's going to shrink over time and how quickly now I can tell more and more of my stories. But you've got a long way to go before I can take a camera and put it on Matthew Woodward and say, man, that looks so much like Matthew Woodward, versus me creating you in an engine. That's just not gonna. You're not. Let me give it to you this way. Just watch the new Harrison Ford movie, The Dial of Destiny. Have you seen this?
Uh-huh.
Did you notice Harrison Ford when he was younger?
Yeah,
that's
CGI
where we are.
That.
It's getting there, but it's definitely not it. Like, I can still tell you're not human.
Right.
And so I do think we have a so far to go.
But that was impressive.
It was very impressive. But, I do think before computers take over all of what we're producing, we still have a long way to go in that respect. So there's still a road for us, if you will, to create using our hands.
Have you seen The Creator yet?
No, I need to go check that out.
Okay, me too. Maybe we need to have a second conversation after we see that. Because I've heard a lot about it, and I meant to watch it over the weekend, but it was a nutcracker and all kinds of stuff, because I thought, I need to watch it before I talk to you. Because that seems like there's a lot of these things that we've been having this conversation about is in that movie.
I'm setting a reminder to go watch it
good.
over the Christmas break. So,
well, I haven't even got to any of my topics here that I want to talk to you about. But one of the things that obviously AI was a part of that, and how it affects scripts, writing, voiceover, actors, all that stuff. That was a lot of the stuff that you guys talked about, or not you guys, but within the strike, right? That had a lot to do with what was going on. But I wanted to broach a different topic with you and just see if you've heard of cognitive security.
No, I haven't heard much of it. Why don't you explain it a bit to me, and I'll tell you if I've heard a little bit more of it.
Okay, so Michael Schellenberger is a environmentalist. He's kind of in politics now, but he worked for the Obama team, and he was testifying in front of Congress about CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And so he was doing research in this, and their job is to look at physical security, cybersecurity, and then they added a third element called cognitive security. And he was bringing it to the attention of Congress, like this is kind of a problem, because CISA has the ability now to understand how social media is used in a way that can, because they know the users so well, they can. It used to be called propaganda, right? Now it's no longer called propaganda, but it's called cognitive security. It's where they're able to give you specific pieces of information to like give you a story, and lead you on a path to the point where you start to believe like this is what reality or truth is, or this is these things. And the question has been brought up as at what point do they become so good at this that it is no longer your ideas that you have, as opposed to they've been implanted in you to believe something else. And so I find that fascinating because like the danger of, first of all, the government putting millions and millions of dollars into a program that can literally take away the ability for us to have what we call free will, which is no longer us making these decisions, but somehow a story has made us believe to make this other decision.
That's interesting.
I mean, it sounds like sci-fi, right? Mm-hmm. But this was in congressional testimony, right? This is what's crazy about this. So like we're talking about AI, but the power of AI and algorithms to know not humanity, but to know you specifically and how you think and what pieces of information I'm going to give you to start making you think in this direction and lead you on a different story than you would have led yourself.
So do you believe that the path that has taken you to this moment right here was all put together from everything that you've obviously learned and done and decided on from birth to now? So if you do, then I don't see how what you're saying is not true, because every decision that you've made, every feeling that you've had has sent you down some certain path.
Absolutely.
And so the question is, can you quantify that? And can you map that out to then predict what it is you're going to do next? That's the question. Cognitively, I think is what they're getting at right now.
And I think you can.
So,
but that's my problem. That's the danger. Like, because I can look back and I mean, we all have people like schema as a psychology term, right? It's why you believe what you believe, and it's all has these layers of what your parents taught you, what your school taught you, your teachers, what your priest or your rabbi taught you. All these helped you to form this mindset of what you believe to be true, right? So it's no different than life. But in life, you have these different, you had your friends, maybe, your parents said, hey, I want you to be an architect. And then your friends influenced you to say, hey, maybe we should go into acting, right? So you have these different, views that are kind of pointing you. And then at the end of the day, who makes the decision? You do. My struggle is what I'm reading this and trying to dig this in, and why I'm bringing this up is it's getting to the point where so many people are no longer, once again, back to our parents are not engaged in kids' lives. Teachers are, the respect that kids have for teachers is decreased tremendously. And so I heard an adult say this yesterday. They said, when I'm looking something up and I want to research something, where do I go? TikTok.
Oh, no.
An adult said that. Now, I know that's true for Gen Z.
Right.
But an adult said, yeah, if I want to find some information out, I go to TikTok. This is the thing that's being used right here. All right, cognitive security. People are using information to manipulate you in a direction, and that's where the vast majority of young people go for their knowledge.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And now you have a government that's investing in money to do that. I mean, I'm a small government guy. I don't like.
You're not a conspiracy guy?
Because I'm a history person, right? I've watched, I have 2 degrees in Middle Eastern history, so I understand the need for government, but I also know the dangers of government. And too often the dangers come about when people get too much power, because power desires more power.
Well, let's think about this to what you brought up with the cognitive decision-making process. You do, I think you and I have talked about this, you do know what Elon Musk is coming up with the neuro...
Oh, this 2024, he's got 10,000 people that have volunteered to put it into their brains.
Well, and the reason why, though, is because they're utilizing it for brain damage, and how that is going to help cure or at least rebuild brains that have had severe damage.
Not only brain damage, but also children or people with not Alzheimer's.
But it's a neural thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It has to do with curing a condition that's a neural defect. Okay. But he's also admitted that, through technology, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi that can be on this thing, that can help us communicate without speaking and without, physical movement. And it can allow for you and I can just have neural telepathy and have a conversation. So have you ever seen the show Black Mirror on Netflix?
You told me. I have not seen that yet.
So there is an episode where essentially everybody on Earth has this neural chip in their head, but what it's doing is it's reading through your eyes the world that you live in, and it's recording it so that you can play it back. If anything, almost like the red flag commercial they have now. It's like, let's watch the replay on that and see if that was right or wrong. But to what you were just now saying with this cognitive security, that would be a massive opportunity to stop what Black Mirror would eventually would do, because it would then be able to read everything that has happened in your life and then make a decision point on whether or not you're going to be a murderer or a family man. And so it can stop you in its tracks before any of that ever happens, from how you have made decisions throughout your life and where we're moving towards. So essentially we go back to what I said before, which is this is just all a simulation. And how are we going to end up either destroying or helping this planet?
There was a Tom Cruise movie. What was that?
There was it was AI was one of his movies.
That was his latest movie had AI. But no, this was years ago where he was a police officer and they could arrest somebody before a crime. What was that movie called? I'm not going to remember it. I'll look it up here in a second. But I remember because they had the goggles on and they were pulling, which is the new Vision Pro stuff that's out now from Mac. But you can do that right now. And you're right. So I love how my industry decides to predict the future, and then people go out and make what it is that we try to predict. Well, that's always been the thing, right? It's that people have debated: is it art that represents life, or life that represents art? I mean, which one is it?
They're all tough conversations to be having right now, especially since things are changing so rapidly. And it's pretty wild. It's an interesting time to be in. I don't necessarily. Again, I'm such an open mind and such a person who is very accepting of what it is that's coming our way. I do feel like we're going to see more good out of it than we will see evil and bad. And I just hope on behalf of all of the children that are being raised right now, they see the same way. But I agree, there are a lot of issues within the structure of the family that are going to create a society that might not be as accepting, or used it in a way that potentially could be harmful. But again, I have hope. So I hope that that's the direction we're going to be going in, the good.
Yes, I hope as well. I think that like all new inventions, from, the stone man, finding fire, there's always a double-edged sword with every new invention. Every new invention can be used for good, but it can also be used for evil or bad intentions. And I think the determining factor of that comes down to us.
It sure does.
How are we going to be responsible? And so for me, as a person, one of the things that I'm big on this podcast, which is why I bring faith into this, is because Nietzsche talked about this, right? He talked, his biggest problem as an atheist was people trying to do away with religion, because he knew that once you do away with religion, you have nihilism, and that is not a good place to be. And so even when he said, and people have taken this out of context, but, what did he say? God is dead and we killed him. He didn't mean that in a good sense. He meant that as a warning, which he saw the upcoming wars coming about because there was no longer a moral force, a moral force of good to say, hey, we shouldn't do this. And once you take God out of the picture, then you lose morality, because if you don't have God that says, hey, these are the things that are right and wrong, and not in a black and white way, but in a way that brings just morality to, hey, this is beneficial and this is destructive, right? You should do these things. You should avoid these things. Once you take that out of it and you have no morality within man, who determines what's good or bad, what's right or wrong? If you are left up to your own devices and you disagree with me, who says you don't kill me because you disagree with me?
Right. And my sense of optimism, as I've been talking through this entire time, it does run into its chinks, which are, when your authority breaks down in what it has been from what I've seen in the government and with journalism and all of the lies and deceit and things that they've hidden from us, it really affects us and the society in a way that says, well, why should I ever believe in any of your optimism? Mm-hmm. Why do I ever believe that things can turn out in a good or in a fashion that needs to be, in a structure that we can all move into the way that we need to be moving without destroying society in a way? Because if I can't believe what I've been seeing in the news, or if I can't get the proper information to me, why should I ever want to believe in the authority that you're giving me from the standpoint of which rules should it be that I need to adhere to and which ones that I need to make sure that I say that's wrong? It's tough for me even to talk about. I'm having a confusion time to even get it through to you, because it's so sad to me that I grew up watching television. The news was on every single day at 5 o'clock in my house. We all watched what was going on in the world. You got your local news and you got your national news. And as I begin to get older and older, I begin to question that, just like I did with religion. Mm-hmm. And, now I feel like we're in a place where nobody watches the news anymore, which is showing through audience numbers, because they've been lying to us over and over again. Yeah. And it's like, you're not telling me the truth. So how long have you been not telling me the truth for? Right. And what do I believe and what do I not believe? And a lot of it has to do with our politics, but a lot of it has to do with what we're covering up. Give us the ugly and give us the positive so that we can make decisions on what it is.
Allow us to make the decisions. Yes. Agreed.
So don't hide it from us, because all it's going to do is make us upset and make us question what your intentions actually are.
You and I are kindred spirits in this, because, the last thing that I want you to do is you to tell me what I'm supposed to believe, right? Whether it be from a church or from the government or from my parents or whoever. Like I had conflict with my parents growing up because, I did not like being dictated to. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, you and I will find ourselves alone at times, because not everybody has that personality. Most people like to be sheep. Yeah. The majority of people like to just be told what to do and how to do it, and go about their day. Very few of us.
I like it when my doctor and my nutritionist tell me that, but otherwise, yes, I want to have the free will to come up with my own opinion.
That's right. And I wish we could encourage more people to be that way, to question everything, everything, and question God. You're not supposed to say that in church, but I believe that wholeheartedly. I think Thomas Jefferson even said it. You are to question everything, even the belief in God. You should question all of these things, because that is what helps you to grow, helps you to learn, helps you to form these opinions and decisions that you need to make for right or wrong. And we don't do that enough today. And I wish we had more stories that were coming out of Hollywood that would challenge us to do these things.
Well, Hollywood is too sort of regimented in their commercial lane of, this is what's going to make me money.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, it's a business. Yeah. I find myself drawing more towards human interest pieces. I really resonate to story of people that, a lot of the times are inspiring. I obviously love to see and hear and want to watch an inspiring story, because it makes me feel good about who we are in society and obviously what I'm going to do with myself and in this world. But there is just a lot of blood and sex and things that people want to continually see and buy, and that's what obviously Hollywood has been pushing. Right. Now you do have those interesting outsiders that want to give you here's the what if story, like the Black Mirrors that I mentioned of the world, and so you want to continue having those that make you scratch your what if itch constantly. But I agree, there would be some interesting stories that come about with how it is we can get to more of those stories that allow us to be more curious about things that are, I don't want to call them taboo, but I mean, a lot of the times you're not going to go down the road of wanting to open the door that people necessarily probably should open the door down. And I mentioned with mental health earlier, which I think was a door that nobody wanted to open for the last decade or so, but now you've started to see that open up. Like, no, there's something really wrong here. There is something that we need to do about it, and we need to talk about it, versus leaving little Timmy in the back corner of the room and not having to let them out in society, because that's just, I think that's where people become shameful of. They feel like it's their responsibility that they failed, but no, it's not that. You really need to kind of shed some light on those types of stories, and we're seeing more of it. But it's tough. But on the other side, there is an easier and easier way for you to tell stories. You mentioned TikTok. So people have a camera on their phones, and they will tell their story, and eventually some of those things become viral, and it gets out, and then next thing you know, Hollywood has to pay attention, because it's like, 20 million people watched that over the last 2 months. We have to make a movie about that now all of a sudden. So that's now your new form of journalism at the end of the day, is finding independent journalism that's actually going to get out of the norm and confide themselves with, I'm not going to accept money from the pharmaceutical companies who are paying me to tell me I need to say this, this, and this. I'm going to go make it on my own and find my own revenue, because I do feel like they feel like that's the way that they need to go. And I do feel that that's the type of stuff that most of society really wants to hear. And I think that's going to build more and more audiences, as you've seen CNN crumble and Fox News crumble. And that's the reason why, is because we're batting against the collection of conformity. And I think that conformity that's been holding a lot of the weight in oil and gas and pharmaceutical drugs are really not being able to influence us as much anymore. And that's what you're going to see. A lot of these stories and these questions of why are going to come out a lot more. So I don't know when society is going to take that on, or excuse me, when Hollywood's going to take that on, but I'm sure they're eventually going to have to conform to it. So.
All right, last question, and we'll end on this. What movie do we need to see that can inspire us in that direction?
You're going to ask me that, and most of the stuff that I've seen lately has been kids shows, because between me dealing with politics here in Louisiana through the film industry, my studio, I apologize. I'm trying to think. I'm blanking, plus the fact that I've got a little jet lag from being in L.A. this entire week pitching. I'm trying to find one that would be great for you, that would inspire you. I might have to get back to you on it, buddy. I'm really sorry. I can't give you one right off the bat. My favorite movie that inspires me is Dead Poets Society. So that is one that I think would inspire all of us if they were to go and watch that. Captain, my captain.
I wish that we could get more people to see that. I mean, yes, I would agree. That is probably one of my top 20, top 10 in there. Like, that is, and I've used it many times for a sermon. Just the carpe diem, seize the day. Like, this whole idea of these kids who were challenged to think outside the box. The first person to throw the book away and forget that, we're not following this anymore. I mean, that resonated with me. I think when I was in college, when did that come out? Like mid-90s, early 90s?
Yeah, I think it was mid-90s. It was high school for me, because I was 95.
After college, then for me, I think I saw that. And I thought, I wish I would have seen that years ago, when I was in high school, to inspire me to want to learn, want to grow, because, what a great emotional, impactful movie to inspire me to something that most young men don't want to do. Read poetry. I'm a baseball player, right? I played baseball in college. I could care less about that. But oddly enough, one of my favorite classes while I was in college was history, right? And English lit. And I loved reading these stories, but I felt at odds with it, because I like this, but I didn't, when I was in high school and college, I didn't want to learn. I went back to school years later. I was just in college to play baseball. That was it. And so I just passed with the classes just so I could be eligible to play. But I wished somebody would have inspired me, because I really did like literature and stories and history. I love reading stories about, previous people that have, done great things in our country and globally too. But American history has always been fascinating to me. So I think one of the books that I want to read next is Grant. He's got a tremendous story, growing up before he was in the military, and then in the military, and then as a president. He's a fascinating character. So a lot of these people I want to.
Well, as we were discussing that, there are two new ones that just came out, or one new one that came out, one of them previously that I'll definitely tell you, but it's a different sort of inspiration. But American Symphony the John Baptiste documentary will inspire you if you are a lover of anything creative to watch how this man brings music to us and how it just completely envelops him while he's going through his process was amazing. But the story that came along with it, with his wife who's going through leukemia at the time of him winning all of the Grammys, was just so emotional. And he has this great quote, I'm going to butcher it, but he basically says, the reason that I am able to pour this music out of me and allows for me to create such great inspirational music is because of the hard things that is put through us as humans. And there he was going through that for the years with his wife, and all of that music that inspired him to put it into his American Symphony album was unbelievable. So go watch that. And from a man who's from here, New Orleans, Louisiana, and how he made it into
Where do
the
I find
world
that?
of music.
Or is it
It's on
streaming?
Netflix right now.
Netflix, okay.
In fact, they just came here and showed it at the was it the Orpheum Theater, and Michelle Obama came to view it with them as they premiered here in New Orleans. So really inspirational. Go check that out.
All right, I will. Well,
All right, bud.
any questions from you?
No, I enjoyed this. I promise you next time I'll come a little bit more rested so my brain can give me more clear thoughts. So I apologize for that. But no, thank you. This has been great. I really appreciate being a guest on your podcast, and I look forward to, like I said, the next time I can be on.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Thanks,
Appreciate
sir.
it, bud.